Welcome along to this deep dive, part of the Heart for Jesus Collective. We're all about exploring the teachings and the living word of our Lord Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And today, well, we're diving into the life of someone who experienced a really radical transformation. Matthew. He went from being a tax collector, often despised really in his community.
Yeah, definitely looked down upon.
To becoming one of Jesus's closest followers. An apostle.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? And we'll be looking at the Gospel of Matthew itself, naturally, but also bringing in some historical context and biblical study insights to get a fuller picture.
Good.
If anyone listening feels a bit stuck, maybe, or wonders if real change is even possible, well, Matthew's life gives us this powerful message of hope and redemption.
Absolutely. So we'll unpack who Matthew was before he met Jesus, the circumstances of his calling, how that actually happened, and why his transformation was so significant, in the context of Jesus' ministry.
Yeah, the ripple effects.
Get ready for some, I think, surprising insights into this really pivotal figure in Christian history. Okay, let's get into it. Who was Matthew before Jesus called him?
Right. So before this life-changing encounter, Matthew, who was also known as Levi, his job was tax collector.
Right. Levi. I remember that name too.
Yeah, they're generally understood to be the same person. Now, tax collector, today, it might just sound like an administrative role, maybe unpopular at the IRS or something. Mm-hmm. But back then, in that Jewish society, tax collectors were deeply, deeply disliked. Outcasts, really.
Outcasts. Why so extreme? What was it about being a tax collector?
Well, there were a few big reasons all tangled together. First, this is huge, they worked for the Roman Empire.
Occupiers.
Exactly, occupying power. So right away, they were seen as collaborators, as traitors, working against their own people for the enemy.
Okay, so that's strike one, a big one.
A very big one.
Oh.
But it wasn't just who they worked for, it was how the system worked. These tax collectors, they essentially bid for the right to collect taxes in a certain area for Rome. But here's the thing. Anything they collected above the amount owed to Rome, they could pocket.
Wow. So a built-in incentive to squeeze people?
Precisely. It was a system practically designed for extortion and corruption, taking advantage of your own neighbors, your own community.
That explains a lot. So you've got the political betrayal and the financial exploitation.
You got it. And we even hear about chief tax collectors, suggesting, a whole hierarchy of this potentially corrupt system. It wasn't just isolated individuals.
So it makes sense then why they were lumped in with sinners.
Exactly. That term sinners often referred to those who didn't follow the strict religious laws and customs, and tax collectors were definitely in that category.
Because of their job. And maybe their association with Gentiles, with Rome?
Yes, all of that. They were often excluded from the synagogue, from normal religious life. Think about that level of social and spiritual isolation Matthew must have felt.
And the Gospels themselves, they point this out, don't they? Jesus eating with these people.
Oh, absolutely. There are specific accounts, like Jesus eating with many tax collectors and sinners. This shocked the religious leaders, the Pharisees.
Right.
It just highlights the massive social barrier that Matthew or Levi crossed when he decided, okay, I'm following Jesus.
It paints such a stark picture. Okay, so this is the man, Matthew, sitting at his tax booth. How does Jesus actually call him? It seems like a huge leap.
It does. And the way it's described, particularly in Matthew's own gospel, Matthew 9.9, is striking in its simplicity.
How so?
It just says, Jesus was passing by, saw Matthew sitting there at the tax collector's booth, and said two words.
Just two.
Follow me.
Wow, that's it. Follow me.
That's it. Yeah. Direct, authoritative. And Matthew's response. The text says he immediately got up and followed him.
Immediately. No hesitation, no, let me think about this, no, can I finish my shift?
Nope. Instantaneous. A complete break from his old life, right there and then. It really speaks to the compelling power of Jesus' call, doesn't it? And Matthew's readiness, maybe, for something different.
It really does. Was this typical? Did Mark's gospel add anything? You mentioned Levi earlier.
Good question. Yes, Mark's gospel, chapter 2, gives a parallel account. It uses the name Levi, but again, it's widely seen as the same event, the same person.
Okay.
And Mark's account maybe gives a little more context around the controversy. It highlights Jesus associated with these tax collectors and sinners, and it includes that really key statement from Jesus when he's criticized.
The one about mercy.
That's the one. Jesus says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners.
That just cuts right through the religious rules of the day, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It defines his mission. He's not there for the people who think they've got it all together. He's there for those who know they need help, who know they're sinners.
Which Matthew clearly did, given his response.
Seems so. And what Matthew does next is also really telling. He doesn't just follow Jesus quietly. He throws a big banquet.
A party.
A big feast at his house. And who does he invite? Jesus and his disciples, of course, but also loads of his old colleagues, other tax collectors and sinners.
So he's immediately bringing his old world into contact with his new hope.
Exactly. It's like he found something amazing, and his first instinct was, I need to share this with the people I know, the ones who are maybe feeling just as lost as I was. It shows the transformation wasn't just about leaving something, but about bringing others towards something better.
That's a beautiful point. Okay, so this transformation is obviously huge for Matthew personally, but what's the bigger picture? The significance for us, for understanding Jesus's ministry?
Right. The significance is massive, really, on several levels. First, as we've kind of touched on, just the act of Jesus calling a tax collector was revolutionary.
Yeah, it flew in the face of everything expected.
Totally. The Pharisees, the religious establishment, they were all about strict adherence to the law, about separation from anything or anyone considered unclean.
And tax collectors were definitely on that list.
High on that list.
Yeah.
So for Jesus to not only associate with them, but to call one into his inner circle, it was scandalous to them. They couldn't understand why he'd eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners.
It challenged their whole system of righteousness.
It did. And Jesus' answer to them is just so perfect. Those who are healthy do not need a physician, but the sick do.
Hits the nail on the head.
It really frames his entire mission, doesn't it? He came for those who recognize their spiritual sickness, their need for healing, for redemption. It offers so much hope, because who doesn't feel sick in that sense sometimes?
Exactly. It's a universal need. And Matthew's response, leaving everything, that's powerful too.
Incredibly powerful. Think of it, this wasn't just leaving a job. It was leaving behind probably significant financial security, however ill-gotten.
Right, it was likely a lucrative position.
And walking away from that, from the only life he knew, into uncertainty, following this traveling teacher. It demonstrates the sheer life-altering impact of encountering Christ.
The pull of Jesus' call overcame everything else.
It seems so. And look where it led. Matthew didn't just become a follower. He became one of the 12 apostles.
One of the core group.
Foundational to the early church, tasked with spreading the gospel. And then tradition strongly holds that he's the author of the Gospel of Matthew.
From tax collector to gospel writer, that's quite the journey.
Isn't it just, and think about his gospel, it's the one that really emphasizes Jesus as the Messiah, the King, fulfilling Old Testament prophecy.
Right, connecting the dots for a Jewish audience, primarily.
Primarily, yes. But what's also fascinating is that Matthew includes things like the Gentile women in Jesus' genealogy.
Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba.
Exactly. And the story of the Magi, wise men from the East, Gentiles, coming to worship the newborn king.
So even while connecting to Jewish prophecy, he's showing the scope is wider.
Yes. It suggests he understood, maybe partly through his own experience of being brought in from the margins, that Jesus' message was for everyone. That inclusive spirit Jesus showed him, he reflects it in his writing.
It all ties together. His personal transformation reflects the wider mission.
Beautifully put. Matthew's whole life, from despised tax collector to apostle and evangelist, it's just this enduring, powerful reminder.
A reminder of what, specifically?
That God's grace isn't limited. His call goes out to everyone, no matter what your past looks like, no matter what society thinks of you. It shouts mercy, forgiveness, and the radical welcome at the heart of Jesus' ministry.
Matthew's story really is just such a powerful testament to encountering Jesus and the change that can bring a man right on the fringes of his society.
Yeah.
Yet Jesus calls him, he answers, and he becomes absolutely central to God's plan.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What parts of Matthew's story jump out at you personally? What does it say about second chances? Or about the kind of people Jesus gathered around him? You know, not the polished elite, but fishermen, tax collectors. Ordinary, even broken people.
Yeah, and the possibility, the real possibility of leaving one life behind for a completely new one centered on faith. It really does challenge you to think about your own life.
Absolutely. We'd really encourage you listening to maybe spend some more time reflecting on the Gospel of Matthew itself, or the lives of the other disciples too.
There's always more to learn, isn't there?
Always. This deep dive into Matthew is really just scratching the surface. The scriptures are so rich.
They really are.
And maybe here's a final thought to ponder. If someone like Matthew, given his background, his social standing, could experience such a profound change and become, a cornerstone of the church, what does that suggest about the potential for transformation and growth that exists within each one of us right now, regardless of where we're starting from?